When we were first told that humans were coming to the station, we had no idea what to expect. We were told things like they had an endoskeleton, they were strong, flexible, durable, able to work for multiple hours, and in truth, that wasn't much. Then again, when the company gives any details on anyone, they simply list everything off like their equipment, even us. Or outside in the asteroid field, ore extraction is done exclusively by drones. Gravimetric engines are used to secure it inside the transport, and the reason for the exclusivity of drones is due to the massive amount of damage that biologicals will always inflict on the machines when they're trying to fill their quota, whether by rushing or not paying attention, or simply by making a game to seeing how accurate they can throw the ore into the transports from longer and longer ranges. The gravimetric engines, of course, would grab a hold of the ore and pull it into the transports at such speed that something will inevitably break. Transports are also drones, as biological pilots will tend to try and dock at speeds considered unsafe. Inside the station, there is constant movement as the machines do not stop. Not only are you trying to check all the equipment while you're inside at your job constantly, much of the process still has to be performed manually. It's difficult and extremely hot work, even here in the vacuum of space. We all figured the humans would barely last a standard day, 12 hours in human times, that is. And when they arrived, we all wanted to see what we were going to be dealing with. We all got very nervous as we saw them. The humans, wow, in sheer size of their musculature, bulging underneath there. Is that skin? Wait a minute, who the hell has skin? Everyone, it's either scale or carapace. What the? Though they look squishy, the sheer size of their musculature bulging out was enough to make a full-size Crayonkin think twice before simply looking at these walking apes and saying, "Nope." Each of the humans was slightly below average in stature. We believed for a moment that this would be a cumbersome issue, being that they wouldn't be able to reach as far, they wouldn't be able to jump as high. Even with all that muscle, they wouldn't be able to do much. Yet all this was alleviated as we realized that they must have extremely dense bodies, as we could hear the force of each step rattling off the bulkhead. This meant they were very heavy, especially for their size. They seemed to come in several different shapes and sizes, too. Some seemed to be very wide in the shoulder area. Others, their midsection seems to poke out as though it's some sort of holding tank for something. And others are far less imposing, being very gangly for their size. The humans were shown their accommodations, and surprisingly, they didn't complain about the lack of amenities. This was strange and surprised everybody because every single other species had demanded more space, more something, but the humans just kind of didn't say anything. Next was their in-briefing, which usually takes all day. Afterwards, it was time for the evening meal, and this is where they started to complain. Apparently, they needed a larger ration. They would only be eating twice a day, so they wanted a larger ration. They calmed down and returned to being cordial eventually, once we told them that their rations would be adjusted soon. Working with the humans was surprisingly pleasant. They're quick to aid each other, even aiding other species with heavy work. It was strange. They didn't complain about moving heavy items or working so fast. In fact, they seemed to take it as a challenge. Some of the humans even adjusted a few of the areas they were working in, making our jobs easier and even more efficient. Everything was going well for a while. It seems as though the humans go through a metamorphosis, and the hard work was showing this. This made their bodies leaner, more efficient. We could see the individual muscles working. Even those that seemed to have larger areas of storage on them seemed to slim down. This transformation sped up when they had to work near one of the forges. This was frightening, just seeing the massive power of each of them, and it seemed as though the more muscle they got, the more frightening they were. This was almost as frightening as the idea of losing our employment due to human efficiency. We worried, would they simply take over? Would they simply fire us and hire more humans? They seem to be working faster and farther than we can. What was going on? Eventually, the ones that had been working here the longest decided to come up with a plan. As I look back, I realize it was a very bad plan. Even though we had enough rations now, we bribed the cooks to restrict the humans' rations, continuously dropping their caloric intake until they were on basic starvation rations, which is enough to maintain the body, but only if you're sedentary. The first thing we all noticed was the physical changes. We saw how lean they were, and yet it seemed as though their muscles were not getting any larger. If anything, they seemed to be breaking down. But later on, we noticed the psychological changes. The humans would get tired of conversing rather quickly, seemed to focus exclusively on their work, and when they did speak, it was to count the days before leaving. Because of this, we believed the plan was working, so we all just shut up and let it happen. One thing we did not expect was that the humans would tend to put an unnatural amount of water into their bodies at this time, constantly putting it inside, even though this made them have to go and expel fluids. They said it, and I quote, helped with the hunger pains. We worried if our plan was in any type of danger, and this is when things went really, really bad. In desperation, the oldest crewmen who'd been there decided that they were going to push things just a little farther, and this would show that the plan was destined to fail from the start. He was the longest working crewman there, and because of that, he used his position to steal the human's meal before the human even arrived to claim it. When the human found out, the crewman simply gave the human the same predatory showing of teeth that we had learned it was called a smirk. Without words, the human picked up a chair with one arm and threw it directly at the crewmate. It only caught part of the crewmate as it whipped by, but it was enough that it got him into shock. When he tried to get back up after diving out of the way, the human jumped over the table, slamming the crewmate into the bulkhead, curling up all his digits, pulling back, and then the human began bludgeoning the crewmate with his hands. Though the human was talking, our translator only said, expletive, insult, expletive, insult, expletive, insult. As other crew tried to pull the human off, it showed unparalleled strength as it tossed everyone away like they were some sort of insect, not even really a concern, just an annoyance. The other humans that saw this did nothing but take their rations, quietly sit at the table, and seem to enjoy the show. When the angry human turned his attention back to the crewmate after he chucked off everyone else, the crewmate was desperately trying to skitter away. He didn't get far. The human reached out, grabbed him by the tail, which is basically like grabbing him by any other reproductive organ, and swung him like a piece of wood against the wall, crashing him into the wall like he was a piece of wood they were trying to break. Without even letting go of the tail, he spun the crewman around another 180 degrees and crashed him into the same wall. He went back and forth and did this at least 3 more times before the foreman skittered in. The foreman was in shock at the sight of one of his crewmen picking up another one and crashing him into the wall back and forth and back and forth, and all he could hear was expletive insult inside his translator. He's even more shocked at the sound of the crewman's shell begin to crack against the bulkhead. The human was still unbelievably angry as the foreman stopped him. The human was apparently still in charge of his faculties. As he spun around and saw the foreman, he had enough sense not to strike the foreman. As everyone calmed down, the foreman started investigating the reason why his efficient station was now going to hell. Seeing what a single human did, when the human asked me what was going on, I told him everything. The humans were in the back listening, and I could see they were getting more and more visibly upset as I explained the plan. A plan to make this work so undesirable, at least to the humans, that our employment would be guaranteed. The foreman was more than upset and immediately ordered the cooks to give the humans all their back rations immediately, and the remaining rations of the ringleaders. Due to contract, he couldn't just fire them right then and there. He had to wait until the next transport arrived, though he could make their lives suck until then. And the humans, of course, got an apology. The cooks got reprimanded and restrictions, and now they're worrying about their employment, as it may be in danger for doing something so unbelievably stupid. As the humans sat there and gorged themselves, I looked at the destruction a single human brought to the station. When I went to apologize to the humans, I found out how a human can be so aggressive. They told me that humans get that way when they are limited on food or denied it altogether. This outcome is so well known within human society that they even have a word to explain this condition. When I heard this strange word and I found out that it's a strange amalgamation of two, I realized at that moment to don't make the humans hangry. You wouldn't like them when they're hangry.